Japan is rebuilding its military in the Indo-Pacific region. Are they re-emerging military power, and are they violating the World War II surrender to their own constitution? Hi folks, and welcome back to the Storm and Cellar. On September 2nd, 1945, General Douglas MacArthur and Japanese Foreign Minister Mamoru Shigemitsu, representing the Emperor Hirohito, signed the Japanese surrender on board the battleship USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay. Under General MacArthur's superior and benevolent leadership, he helped adopt a Japanese democratic constitution which, among other things, prevented the Japanese from remilitarization. So, first, what caused the U.S. to prevent Japan from rebuilding its military in the first place? Japan had the strongest military in the Indo-Pacific region prior to World War II. Unfortunately for Japan, to the victor go the spoils, or in this case, the surrender treaty. Japan was not only a formidable power, but its leaders were ruthless against its opponents or those they conquered. During the rape of Nanking, the Japanese were barbaric in its actions against the Chinese. The Bataan Death March, where the Japanese killed thousands of Filipinos, Americans, and British soldiers, was unbelievable. And of course, the Japanese didn't abide by the Geneva Convention on the treatment of prisoners of war. They were also a committed force to victory at all costs. Surrender was considered never an option. U.S. victory after victory throughout the Pacific Islands and firebombing Japanese cities didn't deter the Japanese from fighting on. Realizing that the U.S. would have to land on the mainland Japan and incur the death of over 1 million U.S. soldiers and killing millions of Japanese, they elected to drop nuclear weapons on Hiroshima and Nagasaki to finally bring the Japanese to a surrender. Like the surrender of Germany, the U.S. realized they'd have to not only dictate the terms of an unconditional surrender, but would also have to initially govern, and the surrender prevented the Japanese from rearming its military. However, in the long run, this helped to rebuild Japan to the great nation it is today. So for years, Japan has operated as the JASDAF, or Japanese Self-Defense Force, and has minimal combat weapon systems, thus relying heavily on the U.S. for defense. Under the Treaty of Mutual Cooperation and Security between the U.S. and Japan, the U.S. established and have maintained numerous bases throughout Japan and Okinawa for years, to include currently 11,000 U.S. Air Force airmen and 96 fighter aircraft on 2 bases and a C-130 squadron located on a 3rd base. 2,600 U.S. Army soldiers are located on 3 small posts there. 18,000 Marines are stationed at 13 Marine camps with 20 fighter aircraft. And finally, 13,000 sailors, 18 ships, and approximately 24 aircraft are located at 4 locations within Japan. Now, we have to look at what's happening in Japan now in regards to U.S. forces. 4,000 Marines have been relocated to Guam. The 2 F-15 squadrons at Kadena Air Base are being removed. A large population of Okinawans want the U.S. gone from the island. And additionally, the Japanese compensates a tremendous amount of money to maintain the U.S. forces in Japan. In fact, 75% or $4.4 billion a year is provided by the Japanese. Now, this is important. Japan is firmly allied with the United States against China and any communist regime in the region. However, as U.S. forces reduce and relocate, Japan continues to advocate for a stronger military. Today, Japan is ranked 5th globally in overall military power after the United States, Russia, China, and India. And its defense budget ranks 6th in the 2021 ranking of 140 countries by global firepower. So it's readily apparent that Japan wants to again become a military power. Perhaps not for a global force projection, but to protect itself from the regional superpower, China. Japan recently announced its biggest military buildup since World War II with a $320 billion plan that will buy missiles capable of striking China and give Japan the ability of a sustained conflict. So what makes Japan a venerable power in the Indo-Pacific region now? Well, first, let's look at their forces. Let's look at their naval force, or maritime self-defense force. Japan's naval fleet has 42 destroyers, which has more than the UK and France combined. 3 frigates with 5 more on order. They also have 22 high-tech, all-bet diesel-driven submarines, and with 7 more on order, and 4 helicopter destroyers, or carriers. Japan has modified the Izumo and Kaga to allow all of the inbound F-35B fighter jets to operate off of them. You can bet that Japan will soon convert the remaining so-called helicopter destroyers to full-fledged aircraft carriers. Now let's take a look at their Air Force, or Air Self-Defense Force. They have 12 fighter squadrons of approximately 330 aircraft, to include 7 squadrons of the F-15Js, 3 Mitsubishi F-2 multi-role fighter squadrons, and 2 F-4 Phantom squadrons, which will be replaced by the 42 F-35s. Japan's Army, or the Ground Self-Defense Force, is the largest of the 3 components, with almost 140,000 soldiers. It's consisting of 9 combat divisions with between 6,000 and 9,000 soldiers each. The majority of the Army actually is intended to protect Japan's homeland from a large-scale invasion. However, the Japanese Army has formed smaller brigade-sized units of 2,000 to 4,000 soldiers, which can be rapidly deployed. All of Japan's modernization will be a welcome sight to U.S. and allied forces if war does come with China. However, Japan lacks one key component: manpower. With a declining Japanese population, poor military pay, and a historical post-World War II aversion to joining the military, Japan has to seek immediate solutions to the recruitment problems to man all of those new weapon systems they're procuring. One smart move is that the Japanese leadership plans to reduce the Army and transfer 2,000 soldiers to the Air Force and Navy by 2025. They're also wanting to reduce 1 or 2 divisions to brigade size, which will provide an additional 3,000 to 9,000 soldiers to the Navy. There are still problems in maintaining active recruiting in the Japanese Self-Defense Force, and I'm sure they'll address those areas of concern. However, hopefully, they won't make the same mistakes and try to replicate disastrous U.S. and Western recruitment initiatives. So is Japan violating the World War II agreement to disarm, or are they violating their own Article 9 of their Constitution, which prohibits Japan from establishing a military or solving international conflicts through violence? Well, there's been a great public debate in Japan about eliminating Article 9, and I suspect that will probably happen within the next couple of years, and here's why. Japan's defense budget has increased each year for the past 9 years. Prime Minister Kishida's government approved a 26.3% budget increase, bringing proposed defense spending to 6.82 trillion yen, or $51.4 billion. With no pushback from the U.S. or Indo-Pacific allies, which I highly doubt they would, I'd say the Japanese remilitarization train has already left the station. I also believe they'll make a huge difference in the U.S. and other allies winning decisively against the Chinese and North Koreans. I believe Japan has entered into a new era of prosperity and aim to protect it, and they, as an ally, is highly welcomed by the West. Also, my prediction is that the Japanese military will surpass India's military in a few years, bringing them within the top 4. So what do y'all think? Is Japan's military remilitarization a good thing or something to be worried about in decades to come? Please leave your comments below. Hey, if you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe, and share with all your friends and enemies. So until next time, make sure all your takeoff and landings equal.